Well, this is not the video I thought that would bring me back. Here I am. Hello YouTube, this is Bassist King. I've come back for the first time in a long time. And today, this is an interesting one, and it's a bit of a troubling matter. But I'm gonna start backwards a little bit. About a week or so ago, I invested in a new bass guitar that I got off of Sweetwater, and this thing's really good. It's just a well, let me show you. This is not a review, by the way. But you see this? Come on, take a good close look at it. Some of my fellow gear aficionados may already understand what's going on here, but here's where it gets interesting. I got this thing for a meager $900. 900 bucks. Now, for those of you that are not that savvy on what this gear is, there are some upgraded Aguilar pickups in here. There is a Aguilar OBP3 preamp in here. And those tuners, those are Hipshot ultralight tuners. To put something together like this, well, it's definitely more than what I paid, that's for sure. But once this thing came in, all the questions of the why and how I paid so low for something like this disappeared. It didn't even matter anymore. So, out of curiosity, I put this thing up against, virtually I might admit, against a bunch of other bass guitars from several companies, all types of tiers, from the low to the middle, to the high, to the boutique, to the very pinnacle. This thing beats the brakes off of everything low and middle tier, no contest. But high and boutique, this is where it gets interesting. Is what most people think of premium, boutique, prestige. All of these big things are usually driven up by legacy, by materials such as wood, a bunch of gimmicks, you know, and of course even brand name, legacy, you know. No names mentioned, but Fender and Gibson, for example. But no hate on them, by the way. But either way, to get something like this that to get something that performs as well as this thing does, I had shot this thing out and compared it to several basses on the market, from the low to the all the way at the tippy top. This thing blows a lot of the doors off this stuff. And I'm gonna have to cut this part. But to go all the way up to what this thing is actually not only holding its own against higher end basses, but this thing in some case even dominates in its hardware. The only things that these premium, these prestige models really seem to I guess accelerate in comparison with something like this, or just the woods. And honestly, if you had put the woods up against, if you put a higher end bass up against this one, even if it was like a Warwick, a Fodera, it would not justify the sound difference in its price. Now, I think a lot of the problem here is that these companies have grown complacent and they're just selling what's good enough, resting on legacy. And unfortunately, they're taking us all for a ride. They're selling you on these woods, on all this marketing buzz, all this hype. That doesn't matter. It's all superficial. It's nothing but opulence. Just something you can look at and it's like, ooh, it's pretty. Sure, it's pretty. There's nothing wrong with being pretty. But you have to remember that we're musicians. We are not supermodels. That was never our job. Our job is to sound good, not to look good. And also, another major problem in this is that these companies don't seem to care about the fit and the function for the musician. And this is a huge problem because there are many players who love many beloved legacy, legendary models. Like, my goodness. I used to love the idea of a Rickenbacker 4003. That was my first dream bass. Did I get it? No. Because I found out that it wouldn't have served me. It wouldn't have served me for what I wanted. It would have looked cool in my collection. It would have been a check off my box. But that's about it. Then I got a little older. I wanted a Warwick. Did I get a Warwick? Yeah, I did. And I had it for a long time. And sure, was I happy with it? Yeah. Then as I got older, I realized that it's not serving me the way that it should in my genre, in my play style, and most importantly for my physicality. I have a condition that is known as arachnodactyly, which basically just means spider fingers. I have really long, skinny fingers that are just disproportionately long. So I end up playing extended range instruments to try to help circumvent this issue. But this bass over here is way more ergonomic. And I'd realized that. And it's lighter too. I noticed that and I appreciate that. The bones that make up this bass, it's a great bass, even in its stock configuration. And I think that would actually help a lot of people. Now, we're going to look at these details here. It's pretty minimalistic, honestly. And just a nice low gloss paint body. No crazy woods. The woods are actually, well, they're not rare at all. You know, you can look up the specs on. I apologize, I don't have that up right now. But the model again is a BTB 866SC from Ibanez. And yeah, this thing does not have a lot of paint. It does not focus on a bunch of visual gimmicks. It doesn't make you go, ooh, it's pretty with the colors. It doesn't do that. That was never the point. But yeah, this guy that I got this bass from put together an amazing thing once I realized just how well this thing performs against everything else. It made me realize that these things all put together causes a massive, massive problem for the industry. These things together put together all make for a very huge problem. Like whenever I said the Rickenbacker and the Warwick, these were things that didn't fit me. Think of all the players now that they've had dream instruments that didn't fit them. Think about that. And think about all the people who put together these high-end, premium, prestige, whatever you want to call them, these high-end instruments. All the people who put together these things with all these materials, all this fuel, this time, these man hours put together to put this thing together, for someone to realize, that's not for me. I made a mistake. And even more so whenever these things are really expensive. Whenever you're buying something that's a big brand name, and you're just, I gotta cut this too. Whenever you buy something that's a big brand name, you really are, chances are, just buying that. And sadly, these websites, these companies are currently not doing enough to inform the user, this is not meant for you. This is meant for somebody who plays this genre, somebody with this physicality, somebody that prefers this scale length. The woods of this instrument is great for these things. It produces this sound. They don't tell you these things very well. So, what do we do about these things? Well, I have solutions, because I thought about them all. Now, like I said, music industry, you're in trouble, but it's not too late. What you can do is reprioritize these materials, that everything that you put on these things, to actually be for function, not for vanity's sake. That is where you start. Once you remove all of the fluff, you remove all of the gimmicks, and you get rid of the crazy woods and the crazy paint job. You can't hear paint, okay? You can't hear paint. We all see this, we know this. So please don't try to play us like this. What we need are things that actually help the player, where we can just get these things that actually do help us, that actually does help the sound, that you're making a actually better instrument for the player, especially if it's something that helps with their form and their physicality. If they need these things, all it takes is a little bit of, let's just give an example. You go on a website and you go onto a section, and let's say you're selecting a bass, and it says, hi, what genres do you like? You know, you select your genres, and it may, for example, give you some ideas of what models you could use that are great for these genres. And maybe you could also put in some information for, you know, how tall you are, how old you are, or something like that, to really get a feel for, okay, this person can handle this much, or they could handle something this big, or they need something this small. That is a huge, massive help for these people. This will buy trust and the brand again, because you want, as a company, to have customers trust your brand. That is how you sustain this company, or your companies, is to make sure that you stay on page and to stay close with the musician to understand their needs. Sometimes it's hard to hear outside of the echo chambers of the gear industry, and it takes these outside perspectives as a musician to really say these things. And really, some people are speaking up, but they're not doing enough. Either that, or they're on the right page, but they dropped the ball. So we really need to get together to make sure that we can keep this together. And also too, sustainable practices. Like I said, if people keep buying these instruments that they don't need, that is a lot of waste. You don't need this waste. Let's try to go for more Well, obviously more communication helps to let the customer know what they need, for one. For two, brain fart. Oh yeah, so we're going to need possibly more sustainable materials. A lot of these exotic woods don't need them. Don't need them. They change very little of the sound characteristics. We need to have things, possibly even more modular things, that can grow with the artist as they grow, so they can continue to hold these instruments and continue to love them and continue to be used, and the people love your brand. That's what you want. This is the way forward. And on top of that, this affects not just the musicians. It doesn't just affect the companies that make the instruments. This affects the planet. This is for sustainability's sake. Like, you don't need to go climb up to this big mountain in the country of wherever to cut down these big rare trees. Absolutely not. There's plenty that can be done. And I'm not saying to not ever use these things, the boutique and pinnacle people. Like, hey, that's your thing, but let's face it. It's not necessary. Let's put function over form. Let's put quality over quantity. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap, and it's going to take some time for you guys to do this. So the faster we get on this, the better. So I think this is a good start. I think that we can have this dialogue together, and if we spread this knowledge, and if we add to the conversation of how these things can make things better, even for the environment, even for people who have never, ever picked up a guitar in their life, this one is important. This is probably one of the more important things in this list, are people who've never picked up a guitar in their life. If they find out that the companies are trying to, just sell you whatever that's coming around because of a hype or a trend, or, oh, this model's legendary. If you do that sure, you can make people be like, oh, I want to get a Fender Stratocaster one day. Sure, why not, kid? But is that what you really need? You have to ask yourself what type of genres you're doing to be able to get what you need. And it's cool if you want to collect. There's nothing wrong so much with collecting, but do you really need that much? Well, it's a good question. I mean, I'm a type of guy who likes to be one guitar bass to rule them all, but sure, I have more than one. I get it. Different tunings, different scale lengths, and different characteristics and whatnot. I get it. There's nothing wrong with having more than one. But now, whenever they're not serving you, whenever they're holding you back, whenever they could be doing better, that is where things need to change. And you don't want these people to be dissuaded who've never picked up a guitar before and to think, oh, well, this didn't, what if this doesn't work out for me? Like, it's already hard enough just to invest in this world. in this music world, especially for these legacy instruments. You can't just walk into you can't just walk in and be like, hey, yeah, I just want to buy a $3,000 Les Paul or whatever, and then expect that you're going to be totally happy with it. Sure, you have a Les Paul at that point, but is it really serving you as well? Are you getting your money's worth? I don't think so. You can get so much better for the price tag, so much better. There are these companies, these newer, smaller companies that are coming up, and they're listening to what the customers want. They know these trends that are coming up. They are listening to our needs. And if these legacy companies are not fast enough to listen to what we need, and if they are not willing to balance, and respect legacy as well as be able to bring us something new and modern, then I hate to say it, you guys are not going to do very well for the future. This is not sustainable. Fender and Gibson, you guys is a core age group that you guys attract, you're fading fast. These newer kids are looking at you less. We know what's up. The time has come for you guys to get it going. Please stop selling us fluff. Please stop resting on your laurels. You need to do better. Do better. Do revolutionary things. Give us innovative designs like you gave us back in the day with the Stratocaster. And do the Stratocaster again. Gibson, do the Les Paul again. Do the SG again. Give us that level of something new that we hadn't seen before again. You guys can do it. It's not hard to at least try. It's always a risk to try something new. But staying stagnant, remaining complacent, and resting on your laurels is not the way to go. But hopefully this message reaches somebody the right way. I need as many people in the industry to see this as they can, to understand that something is very, very wrong. This is not sustainable. And if this continues to go the way things go, it will foster a bad creative environment where musicians aren't as attached to their instruments as they should be, where they'll get dissuaded from wanting certain things. They could be living and they might not know what they need. They need guidance from the people who make these things. We need to know what will help us most. Most players don't have that knowledge. It's only players who are so experienced, who are so deep in their world of music, that they could possibly have that chance. So, but also too, in a world where musicians are not as attached to their instruments, that don't serve them as well, that they're not as inspired. It can make them not want to make music as long. They may struggle with their instruments, and that does not make for good music. That is not inspiring, and that hurts people who listen to music, who need that. Music is essential for us as human beings. We need this, just like we need water, air. We do. So, I beg the industry to do better. Give us what we need, not what sells. It sounds like a risk, but I promise you it's not. This is the way forward. And for musicians, ask the questions for what you need. Try to figure out what is appropriate, the best way you can to figure the right materials. You may even need to do more research. Give yourself some due diligence. You owe it to yourself. And this investment, and these investments that you make, these instruments are more than tools. They can be a partner for you and your creativity. And that's a thing of beauty. And that's something we should all strive for. And for the non-musicians, people who've maybe never picked up a guitar in their life, even people just popping in headphones, just bopping to a beat. You might want to try to push for this change too, because in a world that we all live in, that, well, we need trees to breathe, don't we? Where does wood come from? Look, I'm not trying to get all environmental hippy-dippy on you guys, but it's something we just don't need. Try to make sure that these companies know that we don't need these things. Make sure that you're not getting tricked by a bunch of fancy woods, fancy colors, shiny hardware, a bunch of gimmicky stuff. That's not important. It never was. And unfortunately, the market won't tell you this very much. They're just trying to sell you what they can, just by how something looks most of the time. And that's how they get you. Don't let them fool you. Find what you need. And try to find help for what you need if you don't know what you need. Even the musicians, if you don't know what you need, try to find help. There's resources out there. There's a large community. And we can all benefit from this future where it's musical instruments that can last longer, musical instruments that mean more to us, musical instruments that actually fit us and our styles. That is what's important, and not prestige, not brand image. But I'd like to open the conversation. Has there ever been an instrument that you've been disappointed with that you wish you knew better? I'd love to hear your experiences. So if you can comment or whatever, that'd be nice. I'm not expecting any subscriptions, but I do ask that this gets shared somehow, even if it's just on X or whatever to some music page or something like that. That is greatly appreciated, because this is a future that we all deserve to have, and I can't wait to see you there. This has been Basics King. Take care.